Hey, I'm glad you are back again as we look at yet another project that you can make on very inexpensive equipment, supplies, tools. Uh, we're going to see again that it doesn't really take a lot of money to make really high quality products. Today we're going to be making a bowl. Now this is a project that I'm making for my son-in-law. My son-in-law has just graduated with his doctorate, his PhD in mathematics. We're really proud of him, and he has started his new job. And what part of what he likes to do is he loves to smoke meat, grill, do things like that in his spare time. And so I am going to make him some tools that he can use for his hobby. And one of the things that I'll be making is a bowl. Now, next time I'll show you how I'm going to make the barbecue tools, and you'll be able to see that. But this is what part of what I'm going to be giving him as a way of saying congratulations on completing this major milestone in his life, a doctorate in mathematics. Um, he's just absolutely brilliant. So this is they roughed out. I already turned this some time ago in preparation for this project. This is free wood. I traded another wood turner a large piece of walnut, black walnut, for a piece of Osage orange. That's what this is. This is Osage orange. It was still a little wet, so it wasn't quite ready to turn, but I was able to go ahead and turn the starting of this. And this has now been sitting in my workshop for about, probably close to 6 months. It has not warped much. Been a little bit of a warping, but really not much. And so it really hasn't had to really dry much. It was pretty dry when I got it, but I wanted to make sure that it was totally ready before I turned the final product. And so this is what this is what I turned that chunk of Osage orange into. I just went ahead and turned it so that I have the thick walls, a thick base, and the general outline of the bowl that I'm going to be starting with. What we're going to do today is we are going to finish this out into a bowl that will be ready to give as a gift, because this is one of the great things about this hobby. You can make all kinds of presents, birthday presents, graduation presents, Christmas presents, for individuals on this hobby, and you can do it in a very inexpensive way. So let me explain to you quickly what we're going to do. I already have a tenon on the back side that I'll be able to use. The problem is this tenon is going to have to be taken off at some point. And so let me go to the whiteboard and just give you a general overview of what my plan is for this, turning this bowl and yet getting rid of this tenon, and also doing, working the bottom of the bowl, not just the inside of the bowl. So if you were to look at a cross section of that bowl, this is sort of what it would look like. Here is the thick walled bowl with the tenon attached to the back. Again, I can attach my chuck to this end and I can work the rest of it, but I still need to work this last part. So what I generally do is I turn a little small mortise in the bottom inside of the bowl. Again, I will chuck the bottom outside right here on that tenon onto my chuck, and then turn the bowl. And in the process, I can just cut a small mortise into the bowl. Once I have that done, then I can take this, turn it around, and my chuck jaws can go into the mortise and squeeze out and hold. So the chuck jaws will be in here, squeezing outward and holding that bowl in place while I spin the bowl. At that point, this is the part that is exposed. This outside edge is exposed, and I can work the back and get the back exactly the way I want it um, um, in preparation for completing this bowl. Now you may say, well, now you got this indention that you're going to have to get rid of at some point, and that's true. Once I get the outside of the bowl completed and everything exactly the way I wanted, I will then again turn the bowl around, chuck it on the outside, and then I will return the inside. But all of this is going to be turned away anyway as I make my thin-walled bowl. So you won't ever even know that I put that little mortise in there. Okay, so this is the wood that we're going to be using. You can see there are a couple of chips that I'm going to have to take care of. Right here is the tenon that I will be using temporarily. I'll end up having to take that off, but I'm going to be using that tenon to get started on this project. So as you can see, I'm just going to be hooking this, connecting this up to the chuck that I have that is attached to the lathe. Now, I think I've told you in another video, this is a relatively inexpensive chuck. It's not too awfully expensive. You can buy them that are much more expensive than what I have. So what I'm showing you on these video clips is there is a little bit of warping that occurred when the bowl blank was drying. And but even with the warping, you can also see that it attaches onto the jaws of the chuck very safely, and so it's safe to work on this block of wood. There are a few places that I may have to make some repairs. You can see right here I have a little bit of cracking and a possible hole. I don't know how deep that's going to go, but depending on how that plays out as I continue the project, I may have to do a little bit of repair. Now, the issue about the warping comes into play, especially with me being able to fit the banjo under the wood. When I actually made the original wood blank and got it all hollowed out so that I could allow it to dry, everything fit just fine. But because of the warping, there was a little bit of an issue. Can't get the banjo under the wood. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the extra wood, trying to square this up so that the bowl is rounded again. So I'm just taking the extra wood off. And once I have that done, then I'll need to start working on that mortise that I'm going to put on the inside. So if you remember from the whiteboard, I said I was going to put a mortise on the inside. And right now I'm going to trying to use my parting tool. This is going to be very difficult, to be honest with you, and I'm going to have to change this out and just use the bowl gouge to here I've switched over to the bowl gouge so that I can get this mortise put into the wood. The parting tool just wasn't going to work because the wood being a little bit warped, it just wasn't smooth enough for the parting tool to work. You can see even with the bowl gouge, there is some rough wood that I'm having to take care of, but it the bowl gouge works a little bit better, especially once I get the tool rest up to the proper height. Then the bowl gouge works actually very well. I just didn't have my tool rest up high enough to make the bowl gouge work out very well. So now I'm just going to get the basics of the mortise, and then once I have sort of the basics of it set, then I'm bringing that parting tool right here. I am going to use my detail gouge to get that edge of the mortise very crisp. I want that to be a little bit dovetailed, so I'm getting a little bit of a dovetail appearance to that mortise, and then I'll have to take off that little center cone. But overall, that sets up a nice mortise that I can now turn the bowl around and attach the chucks, the jaws of the chuck onto that mortise. Now, once I have that bowl blank securely attached to the chuck onto that mortise, I am going to go ahead and bring up my tailstock. Unless the tailstock gets in the way, I always want to have a little bit extra protection, making sure that that bowl blank does not fly off, come off the chuck. And so now I've secured it with the tailstock as well, and that just provides that extra bit of safety. I'm going to switch out my tool rest from that curved bowl tool rest, and I'm just going to be using my small straight tool rest because I'm going to be working on the outside of the bowl. Since the bowl is now attached to the chuck, I can work on the bottom, I can work on the outside, I can safely work on parts of the bowl that I really couldn't get to when the bowl was attached to the chuck with that tenon on the bottom. Got to get the tool rest at the right height. I'm using, I believe, yes, I'm using that bowl gouge. And at this point, I'm just going to remove this tenon, and I'm going to replace it with another mortise. Now, this is going to get a little bit tricky because I've got a mortise on the inside that goes into the bowl blank on the bottom, and I'm going to end up with a mortise on the outside that's going to go into the bowl blank, and you have to be somewhat careful about that, or those two concave regions can get too thin, and you can just blow out the bottom of your bowl. But this is what I'm doing right now. I'm just removing that tenon, and it's relatively easy to do. I am taking fairly shallow cuts. I'm not going very deep, and you can see that the bowl gouge sometimes will slip off of the wood because I'm really not taking very deep cuts. Now I'm going to just, now that I have it all flat, I'm just going to use the parting tool to establish where the mortise is going to be on the bottom. Need to make sure that the mortise is the right diameter so that it will fit onto the chuck. This time I'm not going to be drawing onto the wood. I'm just checking it with the tool, and now using the parting tool, I have a good idea of where the edge of the mortise needs to be, and now I'm just using the parting tool to establish that mortise. The parting tool works really well if the wood is relatively balanced and it's pretty flat. If there's a lot of ridges on the wood, it's not smooth, and that parting tool has a more difficult time digging into that wood. But now that I got it flat with the bowl gouge, it works just fine. I'm using a tool here that I actually made, and what this tool does is it's actually no, I put that tool down and I picked up the bowl gouge again. I'm going to clean up the center section of the mortise. I've got that little cone shape region that I need to take care of, get a little bit of extra room. Once I get that middle section, now I can fit this other tool in there. And what this tool does, it just cuts, he just puts a dovetail aspect into the mortise, and does a great job. I had to make that tool myself, but I didn't buy that tool. The mortise needs to be a little bit deeper. As I was checking that with my finger, I realized that it's really just not going to be deep enough to get a good bite with my chuck. So I'm having to come back with my parting tool and making that just a little bit deeper into the wood. Again, I have to be very careful not to go too deep because I've got two mortises, just one on top of the other one in this wood. Now I'm going to use the bowl gouge to again clean off a little bit more on that center section so that I can fit that tool that I made into that region and put that dovetail shape into that mortise. And there's that tool again. And I'm just going to clean that up and finish the walls of that mortise. All right, now that I have that mortise on the bottom set so that I can use it, I need to start cleaning up both the bottom and the outside of this bowl blank. So I'm back to using the bowl gouge. I will tell you, this wood is very dry, and this Osage orange is very, very hard. And so it's it's kind of difficult to take a very big bite out of this wood with these tools, with this tool being the bowl gouge, but just really trying to get a flattened bottom, having a little bit of difficult time because of the hardness of the wood to cut this and to get it flat without having too much tear out. Have to have a very sharp bowl gouge in order to cut through this hardwood without having the tear out. You can see I still have a little bit of tool marks on the bottom, which I'll take care of as I continue to flatten this out. I don't want to take too much off of this bottom as I'm flattening it, because the more I take off, the more shallow that mortise is going to be. And again, I can't really make the mortise much deeper because I'm just going to have a blowout in the bottom of the bowl if I do. There I was just checking to make sure that the edges of the flat bottom are sticking out farther beyond the center so that the bowl will sit flat. So now I have the bowl relatively flat, and on the bottom I still have to do a little bit of work on that, but now it's time to start working on the sides. And I've decided that the bowl I want to make here is going to be relatively wide. So I'm not going to make the bottom too narrow. I want the bowl to be relatively wide bowl, so that I'm going to leave the bottom relatively wide in terms of diameter. I'm going to have a fairly wide diameter base on this foot on this bowl. You can see I'm just using that bowl gouge, but I am trying to get that wobble out of the side of the bowl, trying to get it just squared up. The wood shavings coming off are not really coming off in ribbons. That's partly because I'll probably need to sharpen my bowl gouge some, but also because of just how dry and hard that wood is. It's just coming off mainly in chips as I'm going through this. You'll see in just a little bit that I will end up making one final pass, and I'll have my bowl gouge very sharp, and that will provide a smooth edge of the bowl without having a lot of tear out. You can also see that I am, every once in a while, I just touch the edge of the bowl. I'm just feeling for tool marks. Right here I am mainly doing a scraping cut, just sort of scraping the edge of the bowl to try to get it as smooth and flat as I can with that scraping tool. I am going to leave that lip on the rim of the bowl, that up there at the top of the bowl. I'm going to be leaving a lip there because I'm going to be adding an inlay up there at the top, and I'll have to dig into the bowl to do that, and I don't want that part of the bowl to be too thin. Here you can see I still have some tear out. You can kind of see that, I think, in the video, that I've got some tear out that I'm going to have to take care of. And And I will end up doing that with one final cut in just a little while. Right here, I'm just trying to establish the bottom of that lip on the edge of the bowl. The bowl's going to just come up on the side, and then it's going to have that lip on there. And I'm just using that parting tool really to establish where that lip is going to be. I'm also using the parting tool to begin the process of cleaning up the top edge of that lip. Now, I'm going to have some some chipping that is going to happen. I'll have to get all of that cleaned up as we go along, but I'm trying to see really how this is all going to look. That's sort of the way that I do wood turning. I don't go into it generally with a set pattern. I have a basic outline of what I want it to look like in my mind, but I really make the bowl what the wood will allow me to produce. Because remember, I do not buy wood blanks. I just use logs, and logs have imperfections here and there, and so sometimes you have to make some adjustments and changes to what you might ordinarily plan on, and so that I always have to take that into consideration. I've got a few cracks, and you can see I still have some tool marks that I'm going to have to take care of, and I'm going to be using this sharpened bowl gouge to start taking out these tool marks that are still left from the scraper that I was using. And the bowl gouge will take care of those tool marks. And that's a lot better after using that bowl gouge. Still have a little bit of tear out that I will take care of. A lot of that, some of that tear out I will take care of with sandpaper, but I won't have to take care of too much of it when I'm sanding. And just going to clean up the top edge of that lip that I have around the top of the bowl. But you can see where kind of how the shape of the bowl is going to be, using that scraper to, again, right there at the bottom of that lip, I'm trying to get that exactly the way I want it, a very clean, crisp change from the lip to the side of the bowl. And this is just a very, very light scraping. I'm not doing too much. I'm just cleaning up a few remaining tool marks that I have, but this is really not taking off much wood at all. Just almost like removing powder. And then feel that to try to make sure that I'm getting rid of the tool marks, no cutout that needs to be repaired. So now I have the outside of the bowl pretty much the way I want it. I've decided I want that transition from the side of the bowl to the bottom of the bowl. I want that transition to be a little bit different. So I'm just using that scraping tool, and I am using that scraping tool to round off that transition just a little bit, as well as making it a little bit more concave there at the bottom of the side of the bowl, so giving that a little bit of a concave appearance. After I completed the edge of the bowl, the bottom of the bowl, I had to do a little bit of sanding, really not much. There was very little tear out that had to be addressed, um, but probably sanded it for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then that was it. I was ready to move to the inside of the bowl. Because I made that mortise on the bottom, now I can reattach the bowl to the chuck on the bottom again, only now I've attached it using mortise instead of a tenon. You do have to be a little bit careful because the chuck attached, the bowl attached to that chuck using that mortise, that chuck is pushing out, applying pressure, outward pressure on the side of that mortise. That can cause cracks. It can cause the bowl to crack if the pressure pushing out on the edge, on the sides of that mortise, the pressure gets too great. So you do have to be a little bit careful with that. But here I'm really just starting to work on the inside of the bowl. Using that bowl gouge, I'm going to go ahead and somewhat establish what the rim of the bowl is going to look like, flattening that rim out. It's not going to stay as thick as I have it right now, but the rim of this bowl is going to be a little thicker than normal, again, because of the inlay that I'm going to put on that lip on the outside edge of that bowl. And so this rim is going to be a little bit more prominent than most of my bowls are. Most of my bowls are going to have maybe an eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch at the most wall of the bowl, and the rim is going to be relatively thin, so it's not going to be very prominent, but the rim's going to be a little bit thicker than normal. And so I need to make sure that I have addressed the rim. You can see I still have a little bit of work to do, but after working on that rim to flatten the top edge of the bowl, now I've moved again to the inside of the bowl, where I'm just taking off wood. I'm trying to get the inside of the diameter of I'm trying to get the thickness of the walls of the bowl, like I said, somewhere in the neighborhood of an eighth of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch, but that would be the limit. And so I'm just following really the outside edge of the bowl on the inside, and trying to just follow that same shape on the inside of the bowl that I have on the outside. For the most part, I have it the thickness that I want, but I've got some tool marks that I'm going to have to get rid of. I'm just going to take a few quick passes on the inside of the bowl. And I'm just checking to see if I have some raised areas. Do I have still some tear out that I need to take care of? And you can see I have a little bit right there towards the bottom inside wall of the bowl that is a little bit raised too much, and so I'm trying to get that taken care of. But again, you have to be somewhat careful because the wall of the bowl is getting very thin. The wall of the bowl below the lip. You can see the lip is still fairly thick, but below the lip, it's getting pretty thin. Here, I'm just going to use a scraper, and I'm just gently scraping the inside wall of the bowl, flattening out the last part of the bowl. And that's why, as you can see, it's really just almost fine wood dust that's coming off. It's not coming off in ribbons. I'm just taking very, very light cuts on this wood. I'm not really doing much other than just sort of cleaning up last remaining tool marks as I'm finishing up the walls of the bowl. I do still have those cracks that I'm going to have to address. I ended up addressing those cracks by just putting some CE glue. Just adjust that tool rest. Now I'm going to be using my scraper to very gently scrape the bottom of the bowl. I just need to flatten this out just a little bit more. It has a couple of raised parts to it, and I just need to flatten that out. It's not a whole lot that I need to do, but just address those few remaining issues. Again, the bottom of this bowl, right in the center, is getting pretty thin. Now it's not danger of a blowout just yet, but it is getting relatively thin. So I have to be somewhat careful as I am scraping the bottom that I don't get it too thin. You can see I'm pushing on it just a little bit to make sure that it's not getting too thin. Tapping on it, you can, if you tap on the wood, you can kind of hear a little bit of a difference. It's not a situation that I have to worry about just yet. But really, I'm to the point now that I am just cleaning up tool marks. I've decided that I'm going to put a little bit of a step down region. I checked that the center of the bowl to make sure I could do this, but I want to have just a little step down lip there on the bottom of the bowl, which is going to define where I have part of my inlay. I determined that I have enough wood still left at the bottom that I can do this. If you determine that you don't have enough wood at the bottom, that's not the end of the world. You just can't put this step down lip onto the bowl. And a lot of my bowls will have that little step down section because I just think it looks good. I like it better with that step down section. And so if I have enough wood left over, then I will do that. And I'm just using my parting tool now to get a very crisp step right there and cleaning up the bottom. Now, before I move to the inlay, I am going to have to, again, just do some final cleanup, getting the tool marks of this new area that I've been working on. And I'm just using a scraper to remove these final remaining tool marks. I still have a little bit of a tool mark there on the sort of the bottom curve of the side of the bowl that I'll take care of. I think it's off camera. So what I'm doing here is first off, I'm rounding over the top lip of the bowl and also giving it a little bit of a curve so that it's not just coming up straight and then just ending. So I'm giving it a little bit of a curve outward at the lip of the bowl, and you can see how that is turning out. The bowl's pretty light at this point, and so I have to be a little bit careful of getting some vibration because I really don't have a lot of tool marks left that need to be addressed. I'm going to do some minor sanding on it. It really didn't take a lot of sanding, but the thin walls require that I be a little bit careful as I am doing this sanding. You can see there in the cracking, I have off screen, I have taken care of a little bit of that, of the cracks there on the top edge of the bowl. And again, that's just CE glue, that's just super glue that I have used. And then I sanded it a little to smooth out that super glue. What I'm doing now is I am making a little groove right there in that lip of the bowl where I'm going to put the inlay. So the inlay is going to be set into the bowl, and just making sure that that is just a groove that I'm pleased with. You can see I use this company does not give me any money. There is no sponsorship or anything, but I use a product called Milliput, and I will put the epoxy inlay in that little groove. I'm also going to put an inlay there at the bottom, then that step down region. So I use that Milliput. I've used other epoxies. It's an epoxy putty. I've used other epoxy putties in the past that work fine, but this is the product that I've gotten to where I use. They have a narrow variety of colors. It's not like there's a huge number of colors that you can use, but there are some different colors. I always put gloves on. I don't know if it's really necessary to put gloves on, but this is epoxy, and so I'm putting gloves on. It's a two-part epoxy, just like a two-part liquid epoxy that you may have used, but it's a two-part putty epoxy, and you're just going to have to mix the two parts. And the instructions say that you want to have about an equal amount of each one of the two parts. And so what I do is I will cut one of the parts of a particular length, and all I'm doing right there is I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how much putty am I really going to need to get all of the inlay that I want. I don't want to waste a lot of this epoxy by using too much, but I also want to make sure that I don't have to do it twice, because there's always a chance that if you have to do a second section, that it's not going to be quite the same shade as the first section. And so you really want to do it all together. But you want to make the two parts of the epoxy about the same length, and then just start mashing it together. And you're going to have to mash it and mash it and mash it. I think the instructions say you mash it for 10 minutes. I'm a firm believer that you mash it until you are confident that it is all mixed up, and then you mash it some more. And so I mix it and mix it and mix it. You're going to have some little crumbs that will fall off, and I pick those crumbs off. But I just keep mixing it and keep mixing it. It's not going to harden immediately. You have plenty of time to work with it, but just keep mixing. Once I have it all mixed the way so that I'm certain that it's mixed properly, I'm going to start rolling it out into like a worm shape appearance. Again, that's going to have to fit into that groove along the outside lip of that bowl, and it needs to completely fill that groove and actually sort of poof out out of the groove. You want to make sure that you have the groove completely filled and then some, because you're going to end up taking the extra off, and you want there to be plenty in there so that when you finish taking the extra off, it's not, you don't have gaps. And I generally start off by just mashing it into the groove. And I'm not trying to fit it into all the little crevices and corners of the groove. Right now, I'm just trying to put it in. And once I have it into the groove, then I will start mashing it so that it's mashed in completely. And that's what I'm doing here. Again, it's still going to sort of hump outward. It's still going to have plenty sticking out from the groove, but I'm trying to keep it. I'm just trying to press it into that groove. Some people do say that you need to put an oil on the bowl around the groove so that the color doesn't get into the wood grain. I've never found that to be necessary with this milliput. Uh, I've never really found it to be necessary using any of the two-part epoxy putties that I have used. Um, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do it if that's what you chose to do. But you can see it's sort of healed. It's sticking out from the edge of the bowl, so it's filled up that groove, and then there's more after that, and that way I can take that part off. Here's my wife's feet and legs. But I did a similar thing on the bottom of the bowl where I've just mashed that epoxy right there up against that step down lip that I had made on the bottom of the bowl. From here, you have to let it dry. I always let it dry at least 24 hours. I think I let it dry for 48. And then you put it back on the lathe and just flatten it out. So I have the shape of the bowl already, the way I wanted it. And now all I'm doing is I am just basically using a scraper, and I'm just scraping the top of that inlay so that it is exactly flat. So here you can see there's just a different angle that I'm still just flattening that inlay so that it just lays very smooth. It's not sticking up at all, but there's also not any part of the inlay where I'm digging into it. It is just very flat against the wood. Now I have to work on the inside, that inlay that I did on that bottom step down. And I'm going to start off by using my parting tool to establish an interior wall on the ring, that inlay ring. So I'm just trying to get that. Still have, it's a little bit wonky there, and so I'm going to have to take a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to take quite a bit more off of that interior aspect of that ring, and just get a nice crisp step down to the bottom of the bowl. You can see some of that epoxy starting to pile up on the inside wall of the bowl. Again, I've never known that stains the inside wall. Maybe there are some epoxies that do, but I've never used an epoxy that does. And so it's never really been a problem for me for that to to pile up on the inside wall of the bowl. Now I'm just using my scraper so that the top of the inlay is just very flat with the bottom of the bowl. That way, that's just a very, very flat structure. Cleaned off the inside of the bowl, just blew out the extra of that epoxy. Now I'm just going to do some very fine sanding of the bottom of the bowl. That will include the inlay. And once that I am pleased with how that is just smooth, a smooth transition from wood to inlay, then I just completed the finishing of the bowl. This is a lacquer finish that I used. You can see I did a lacquer finish. That is, I believe, 3 lacquer coatings, and with a fine sanding in between each one of the lacquer coatings. And then I did a shine buff on after the 3rd layer of lacquer, and that's how the bowl ended up. And so I'm very pleased with the way this turned out. Those cracks, you can kind of see those cracks there in the upper left-hand corner of the picture. You can sort of see the cracks, but you cannot feel them. It's very smooth because of sealing those cracks with the CE glue. Now the cracks are down at the bottom of the bowl, and you can see that there really isn't, there's not a gap or anything in those cracks. The CE glue did a fantastic job of just sealing those cracks. And also keep in mind that the CE glue makes keeps the wood from breaking off while it's spinning on the lathe, so that's a lot safer for you as the wood turner. And that's the way this bowl ended up. Again, I'm very pleased with it, and I'll be giving it to my son-in-law as a part of his graduation gift. But that takes care of this project. The next project that I'm going to be working on for next time is a project that comes from a kit. And I want you to understand, you can, using low-cost tools, a fairly inexpensive lathe, very inexpensive tools, you can make bowls and you can make all kinds of things that you might want to make. But you can also make things that come from a kit. And so I am going to use a kit that I have purchased, and I'm going to make grilling utensils. So it's a 3-part grilling utensil kit, and I'll be showing you how to do that as well. This is something that I do. I mean, I make these types of things regularly as gifts, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, things of that nature, and people really love them. They come, end up being very nice wooden handles, and I'll be showing you kind of how to do that. Each kit is a little bit different depending on the manufacturer, the company you purchase it from, but they all are somewhat similar too. So I'll be using one particular kit and showing you how to make that. I hope you all enjoyed it. Check back later, and I will upload the video of making the grill utensils and how I do that, and how you can do that also with, again, very inexpensive tools and free wood. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.